What happens when a comedy legend who spent his life testing limits sits across from a host who believes she knows where those limits should be? What happened on The View wasn't just another talk show moment. It was a lesson in how fast things can fall apart when two strong personalities refuse to back down. Before we dive into what happened, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave your thoughts in the comments. There's Mel Brooks, 98 years old, sitting there like he owns the place. And let's be honest, after making Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, and the producers, he kind of does. The segment begins harmlessly. Joy Behar is smiling, the audience claps, and everyone expects a pleasant trip down memory lane with one of Hollywood's most loved figures. Joy opens with what sounds like an easy question about how comedy has changed over the years. She's clearly leading to something. Mel listens politely, grateful, humble, talking about how lucky he's been. It's all routine. Then Joy turns the conversation. She mentions Blazing Saddles, saying it's a film that couldn't be made today. Her tone suggesting that's a good thing. The air shifts immediately. Mel's smile tightens. He tells her, that's not quite true. He explains the movie's purpose, to mock racism, to show how ridiculous hate looks when laughed at. He's calm, trying to explain, but Joy cuts him off, smiling while speaking over him. She says intention doesn't matter as much as impact. Comedy, she insists, must now be responsible. That phrase, back then, lands with weight, like she's calling him outdated. Mel's jaw sets. He's heard this before, but hearing it on live TV hits differently. He leans forward, quieter now, more focused. He asks if Joy has actually watched Blazing Saddles, not just read about it. Joy laughs it off, says of course she has. Mel doesn't drop it. He asks her to name one scene that bothers her. The room tenses. Joy's smile wavers. The other hosts shift uncomfortably. She starts generalizing about tone, language, and portrayals. Mel waits, watching her closely. When she stops, he tells her she's doing exactly what his movie mocked, deciding what people should be allowed to laugh at or think about. Joy's expression hardens. She shoots back that there's a difference between censorship and standards, between free speech and being careless. She mentions how comedy has hurt people and why representation matters. Mel nods. He agrees words have power, and that's why comedy is essential. He says softening it doesn't make the world better. It makes it toothless. The audience is silent now. This is no longer fun TV. The other hosts look uneasy. Joy tries to regain control, calling Mel's career a legacy, but the way she says it feels like she's calling him irrelevant. Mel straightens up. The politeness fades. He calmly tells her he doesn't need lessons on the times from someone who thrives on controversy. The audience gasps. Joy looks stunned. Then she snaps back, saying she's been fighting for progress for decades. Mel asks her the difference between speaking truth to power and just speaking opinions disguised as truth. Whoopi Goldberg jumps in, trying to change the subject, but Mel waves her off. He's not done. He tells Joy the real problem is people who've forgotten how to laugh at themselves. Comedy, he says, isn't about comfort, it's about thinking differently. Joy insists making people squirm isn't the same as dehumanizing them. She talks about jokes that hurt marginalized groups. She's passionate, not just arguing. Mel listens, then agrees with part of it. He says real comedy shouldn't punch down, but Blazing Saddles didn't. It mocked the racists, not the victims. He reminds her the black sheriff was the hero. Joy says intent doesn't matter if people laughed for the wrong reasons. Once art is out there, she says you can't control interpretation, so creators must be more careful. Mel gets animated. He says if artists only make things no one could misunderstand, they'd make nothing. Trusting the audience, he says, is what separates art from propaganda. He gets louder, hands moving. He says when fear guides art, you're no longer creating. You're just trying not to offend anyone, and that's not comedy. The studio feels electric. Some nod, others frown. Joy leans in, no smile left. She says it's easy for him to talk about freedom when he's never been the target of harmful jokes. She says people just want more care in how they're portrayed. Mel's response cuts deep. He says he's Jewish, reminds her of Springtime for Hitler, how he made Nazis ridiculous instead of terrifying. He asks if she really thinks he doesn't know what it feels like to see your people mocked. But he chose laughter as resistance. Joy tries to interrupt, but he continues explaining how oppressed people have always used humor to survive. Jews, black comedians, everyone who's faced hate. And now, he says, that kind of humor is being called dangerous. He asks who decides what's acceptable. Joy says it's not about control, it's about listening when people say something hurts. She argues creators should listen, not argue. Mel challenges her, asking which people she means. No community thinks the same. He says if we wait for everyone to agree, nothing will ever get made. The discussion spirals. Joy names modern comedians who balance humor with sensitivity. Mel praises them but says they're working under fear, afraid of one bad joke ending their careers. He asks if that's healthy for art. Joy argues accountability isn't fear. Comedians have always read the room, and social media just made that faster. She says if they can't handle criticism, maybe they're not that great. The tone implies maybe Mel wouldn't survive today. The air tightens. Mel catches it. He says he's made people laugh for 80 years, his work still loved, and he doesn't care about surviving in a world that treats comedy as dangerous. Maybe, he says, the problem isn't comedians, it's the culture. Joy's voice rises. She says his attitude is exactly what blocks progress. She compares his resistance to people resisting civil rights and women's liberation, saying change always meets anger. Mel's reply is cold. He says comparing this debate to civil rights is absurd. Fighting for dignity isn't the same as fighting over what jokes people can tell. The audience reacts with gasps and scattered claps. Joy, flustered, insists she wasn't equating them, just pointing out how people resist change. Mel asks who we is when she says, we need to do better. The comedians? The audience? Or people like her who want to decide for everyone? His voice is calm but sharp. He says he's never needed permission to make people laugh. Joy fires back that maybe that's the problem. He's never had to think about who gets hurt. She calls that privilege. Whoopi tries to change the subject again, but no one's listening. This has gone beyond comedy. It's personal. Mel tells Joy she doesn't know his life. He talks about losing his father at 2, fighting in World War II, seeing the camps and choosing to make people laugh anyway. Humor, he says, wasn't a game. It was survival. Joy softens. She says she respects his story, but insists that doesn't excuse ignoring others' pain. Humor may have saved him, but it hurts others. She's trying to find middle ground, but Mel's past patience. He says humor is a weapon, and it depends where you aim it. He aimed at racists, not victims. But people like her, he says, want to make that weapon unusable. When comedians fear being funny, he says, only the people who deserve to be mocked benefit. Joy argues that satire shouldn't hurt the marginalized. She repeats that idea again, but Mel says his films never did. The tension is thick. The audience looks frozen. Nobody knows how this ends. Joy insists she wanted a discussion, not a fight. She asks if he really thinks there's no room for growth, no reason to reconsider how comedy affects people. For a moment, Mel seems thoughtful. Then he says, of course growth matters. But growth doesn't mean surrendering to trends or letting people who've never created art dictate how it's made. He says discomfort isn't harm, and mixing the two has made people afraid of their own opinions. Joy snaps. She says it's easy to say that when you're not the one being turned into a joke. Her voice shakes now. She lists examples of jokes used to justify discrimination. Mel listens, then quietly says she's right. Comedy has hurt people. But the answer isn't to make it safe. It's to make it smarter. You don't fix bad art by making less art, he says. You fix it by making better art. Joy hesitates. She asks who decides what's better art. Mel says the audience. Not critics or committees, audiences. If it's good, they'll embrace it. If not, they'll forget it. But now, he says, a few loud voices can erase something millions loved just by calling it offensive. Joy says dismissing people's pain as noise is exactly the issue. Democracy in art, she says, means everyone's voice matters. Mel points out the irony. She's talking about inclusion while arguing for limits. He says he's not ignoring pain. He's questioning if silencing art is the answer. By now, they're no longer listening to each other. The other hosts have given up. Joy says he's defending a world that's gone, where comedians could say anything and never face consequences. She says good riddance to that world. Mel sighs. He says the world she's describing sounds bleak, a world where art is committee approved, jokes are filtered through gatekeepers, and surprise is gone. He says that kind of control always feels righteous to those enforcing it. Joy starts to speak, but Mel interrupts. He says he didn't come there to be scolded. He came to talk about comedy, something that still excites him at 98. But this, he says, is exactly why he avoids these talks, because they've become joyless and exhausting. The room falls silent. Joy takes a deep breath. She says she's sorry he feels that way, that she just wanted a real conversation. She says disagreement isn't bad, it's how progress happens. Maybe, she says, if he'd been more open, they'd have found understanding. Mel looks at her for a moment, then says he did listen. He just disagrees. But in her world, disagreement equals harm. Not conforming equals hate. He says he's spent his life refusing to be told what he's allowed to find funny, and he won't start now. The segment ends awkwardly. Whoopi finally thanks Mel. He nods politely. The cameras cut to commercial. The audience sits stunned. What just happened wasn't about one movie or one interview. It was a collision of worldviews, freedom versus restraint, art versus control. No one changed their mind, but both laid bare the divide that defines comedy and maybe culture itself. So, what do you think? Was Mel Brooks right to defend his art? Was Joy Behar right to question it? Can there be a balance between creative freedom and responsibility? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit subscribe and tell us, does comedy need more rules or fewer?